Okay, now we're not going to talk because there's nothing to talk about.
We've got nothing. Okay.
There we go.
There we
Recording
go.
has started.
There we go, yeah.
Perfect.
Well done, Ben Burnett.
Okay. Let's get started and everyone can see the screen. Again, welcome to everyone. Just a little bit of sort of background and context. We decided that as we progress towards World's Masters, we thought it'd be a good idea to leverage some knowledge that's around. We have some people with some really good experience, knowledge on how to not only row better, set up your boats, how to train. And all we're trying to do over the next sort of 5 or 6 sessions is just share some of that knowledge. Last week, we spoke about the Masters training programs with Rika and Ramon. Today, we're going to be talking technique with Graham. And then just so everyone's got a heads up of what's coming up. Next week should be good fun. We're going to get some people who've been to Masters events overseas to share some photos, to share some videos, and share the experience, the whole pageantry of Masters rowing. So you can get a bit of a feel there and ask about it. And then some interesting ones coming up after that. We're going to do some setting up of your boats. Just check sounds. Setting up of boats. And then the last one is preventative maintenance, and that is looking after your bodies and making sure that we can row sort of all year round. Just a little bit about how we do it. 30-minute call. We obviously have a guest or a couple of guests, and we look to do some straightforward questions. We let the conversation go where it needs to go. And then right at the end, we do a couple of adverts just so everyone knows what regattas are coming up, fundraisers, etc. And then we open it up to questions. It's very experimental, so Robbie and I just sort of take it as it goes. This week, because it's like a slightly smaller group, we probably after about 25 minutes will open it up. Feel free to put your cameras on and ask the questions directly. Obviously, I do this with Robbie. We usually are joined at the hip, but Robbie's down in Natal at the moment. And Robbie can tell you quickly why he's down there while I set some other stuff up.
Yeah, so I'm here in Durban. The weather's great. It's actually very warm. So I've got my brother Albie, who's running his 18th comrades, and I'm making sure he doesn't quit halfway. So we're going to keep him going. And as runners know, you've got to say it's his 18th consecutive comrade because that adds more weight to the running. So I'm down here, and the weather's great, actually. And Ben, there's a little bit of feedback. I don't know if it's your mic or my mic.
Maybe it's mine. No?
Yeah,
I've got headphones on, so I can't see if you guys have got headphones in.
Yeah, that's better. That's better,
That's
Graham. There's just a bit of feedback there. Good.
Perfect. So let's jump into an introduction. So we've asked Graham Cooke to sort of have a chat with us. Over and above, so if you want to know where Graham is sitting in the boat, he's here at number 2. He's part of the category we call once we're lightweights. But this was the first South African.
Such a bitch, Ben.
This is the first South African lightweight crew back into international competition. This 8 was brought together to go to the Montreal World Champs, and Graham was an integral part of this. But I'm actually not going to stress Graham's sort of rowing sort of capabilities, and more focus on what I think was your biggest contribution to South African rowing. You can, when you come on, just change if I get any of these facts wrong. For me, the biggest impact you had on South African rowing was when you decided to jump into the VLC4. For context, at the time, everyone said you had to row at Rudderplaat. You had to be on a 2,000-meter course. Graham and his rabble said, no, we can do this at VLC. And then, so not to discredit the guys Graham jumped in with, but to be perfectly honest, at the time, the rest of the crew were considered sort of B-rate oarsmen. And Graham jumped in and started changing how the guys were rowing. And a lot of people were going, what's going on with this VLC4? And slowly but surely, the technique changed. And before we knew it, the VLC Cox's 4 was dominating the Cox's 4 event. For me, it changed lightweight rowing, and I believe then when Mike came across, jumped in the boat as they started preparing then for World Champs and Olympics, so at the national level, again, that better rowing, that lightweight technique is what, put them where they are. And I believe that shifted everything right up to London. Not taking anything away from Jacko and Christian and other people who helped coach, but I really think your style and your thinking of feeling a boat had a significant impact, starting with that VLC crew, getting them to where they were, and then how that influenced sort of the rest of South African rowing. So on that note, welcome, Graham.
Thanks.
Cool. And I was actually laughing. I got the photos from John Chelius. And
Well, I have never seen these images.
Is that okay?
Yeah, so I've seen them for the first time.
We probably could have had an hour's conversation on just purely the personalities of those 9 people and the other Viana brother not in that photo, and John. So there are some incredible personalities there. But let's just start a first question. I mean, we're talking technique and we're talking masters rowing, and we, between Robbie and I, we see 2 parts to this. We see the experienced rowers coming back and having to relearn, or having to look at how their bodies are now shaped and say, how do I row? And then obviously we have a lot of novices going, I just want to row better. I want to enjoy my rowing better. What can I do? When you look at the masters rowing, what are the basics of what are you seeing people getting wrong? And what do you think people should be working on?
Sure. Okay, so like you say, there are definitely 2 categories. There are the guys coming back, and some who never went away and have been rowing badly their whole lives. And then the guys who are starting fresh. And I have to say that some of the guys starting fresh, like the more recent guys, the Bernd Juliches, the Ian Johnson, Samantha Johnson, Renee, who's now in Australia, they've been, and Kevin, who rowed at Mondial at school level. I think he did a little bit of club, maybe at Old Eds, 1 or 2 years, but then went into the wilderness, but never did anything at club level, and then came back to masters rowing. Kevin went on to win. He went to Masters Worlds the first time and won it in the single, which is an amazing feat. I spent about 6 months with him, coaching him from the bank and just working on little things. So he was quite easy to mold, and he was quite impressionable, and he was, easy, and a really easy guy to work with. Burnt sculls unbelievably well for a guy who started sculling probably, I don't know, less than 10 years ago, just as something to do, because his kids were rowing, and he liked the idea of it, and he wanted some or other exercise other than going to a gym. And he got so into it, he bought himself a really, really nice boat instead of a Porsche. So it's like, and it's when you talk to these people and you get through to them, it's like it's waiting for the light to go on in their eyes. And when you don't have to say anything, because you can see the joy when the penny finally drops. But it's a thing that has to be continually worked on. I mean, myself, when I go away, if I go away from it for 6 months, I go and work, and then I come back, I kind of have to reteach myself how to row, and I fall in the same holes, and I should know better. I fall in exactly the same holes. And some of those things would be, the one that always gets me is always sort of using my upper body far too much. And you'd think it's counterintuitive, but it's actually not, because I've thought about it a lot. I think we all use our hands to do everything. We eat with them, we open doors, we pick up things, we move things around. It's all our hands and our upper body. We use our upper bodies for a lot of things, unless you're a runner. Okay. But in actual fact, your upper body is quite useless in a rowing boat. It has no power. And I always say to people, try walking 10 meters on your hands and tell me how that goes for you. And it's actually incredibly difficult to do that. Yet we walk around on our legs all day, but we get in a boat and it's the last thing we think about using, is driving the boat with our legs or connecting the boat to your legs. And the crew that Ben's talking about, we spent a bit of time with a bunch of Germans who came out for some winter training, their winter, our summer. around November, December. They were staying with a guy who was also in that 8 you just saw, Roy Pepper. He was rowing at 7. And they were staying with him, and he looked, he lived just across the road from the lake, so it was an easy walk for them, and they were rowing a pair. He'd organized a boat. And we watched these guys go around, and we looked at them, and they were like, they looked quite slick, you know. And then we measured their rig and their boat and that, and I was like, yes, like these guys are rigged so heavy. Okay, like, how do they do this? And the one day they were getting bored of rowing the pair, and they said, wouldn't you guys like to row a 4? So we said, yeah, sure. So because Roger and myself had stayed behind, we'd started rowing the 4 already with Mark Rowand and Ross Hawkins. And we decided to go row the 4 with these guys, and we went around and around and around. 10 laps later, I was like, geez, like, and we were working hard, and really, really hard. And these guys they didn't speak English very well. Anyway, they went back to Roy's place, and he phoned me later. He said, gee, I heard you had a row with the guys. I said, oh. I said, what do they think? He says, they think you guys row far too hard. So we were carrying these suckers around for 10 bloody laps. Roger and myself, because we were determined we were going to have the biggest puddle, the biggest swell in the boat. And anyway, we got together and started to work with these guys, and it was quite interesting. They had a very interesting philosophy. So that was the one thing that teed it up. And their philosophy was much like, Robbie, what you were talking about in the triathlon. You also say that the rowers go far too hard, and you're absolutely 100% right. These guys, you could not row more than 140 beats on your heart rate, and your sessions had to be 90 minutes or longer. 90 to 100 minutes was a session, and you had to maintain a heart rate of 140. Now, when you're 25, 26, 27 years old, to hit 140 and hold it there is quite difficult, because your heart rate can rev. You're young, it wants to go. So rowing at 140 is actually like rowing quite, it's a very low intensity. And so we trained like that for quite some time. And then we actually spent a session with Paul Jackson beginning of December, and they just had a coaching visit by a guy called Chris Kozanowski. Yeah. And he had this thing of they took an old bicycle ergo, and they said, right, lift yourself off the seat. First you try with your arms, it doesn't work, and they said, okay, now hold on to the handle and hang. There you go. And then drive yourself off the seat, and then you stay off the seat, and they let the wheel go out, and then you watch that somebody moves the seat underneath him, because if he falls on the bar, he's going to hurt himself. So they just move the seat, and then you just maintain yourself off the seat, and then you watch how the body works when you're in that loaded position. And that set up the drive for us in terms of how to do it. So we did that, suspending from the boat, the handle. Then we went off and we rowed the 4, and he rowed us in pairs. So basically 2 people at a time in the 4, with the extra load on, so that you could feel this suspension, the suspended drive. And the funny thing is if you're holding on with all the right bits, you don't have to row that hard to achieve suspension in a boat. But you do have to push with your legs as opposed to pull with your arms. And if you're maintaining that drive off the seat, as you get to the back, you start to the back end of the stroke, you start to swing and pull and drive at the same time, because when your legs start getting flatter, it becomes harder to keep yourself off the seat. So you have to engage other things, because the boat's moving faster, so you're losing contact with the water, which means you're coming back down onto the seat. So everything has to start moving quicker because the boat's accelerating. And everything just naturally goes that way. So you draw your hands in faster and you swing towards the back end of the stroke. And that was like a blueprint that we followed that season. That combined with rowing this ultra low intensity, we would do 12 sessions in 10 days. And we never went above 140 beats a minute. And every session was 90 minutes or longer, except for twice in the 10 days to get rid of the boredom. we were allowed, the German's language, you are allowed to go above 160, but only for 7 minutes at a time. And you're only allowed to do it 3 times in a session, and that's the end of that. And you can put those sessions in twice in the 10-day rotation. So 12 sessions in 10 days, which means on 1 or 2 of the days you had a double session. And quite honestly, so I said to the guy, what about speed work? What do we do about speed work? He says, oh, show me your regatta calendar. So we looked at regatta. So which races do you want to win? So we had Rivera Val. We said we'd like to win that one. It's like a match race. And Buffalo Grand said definitely want to win that one. And then obviously national championships. He said, national championships, I'm fine with that. He said the Rivera Val and the other one, he said, those races look a little bit too close together. So I said, well, we'd like to try. He said, okay, well, you can give it a go. But he said, in all the other races, you go and race as many boats as you can because that's your speed work. And I looked at him and I went, wow, that's a different approach. So he was like, go and race. You've got to learn to race. So you go and race to learn to race if that's what you want to do. You have to go pick a fight with somebody if you want to learn how to box. You know what I'm saying? So
can I
you're only going to find out if you can do it once you get hit.
Yeah. Can I pull you back? Sorry, I'm going to pull you back sort of a minute ago. I mean, you spoke about rowing in pairs, and I think that's an important part. And the idea is stabilize the boat.
Yes.
So people can actually learn to row properly.
Yes.
You know, again, what's your thoughts about that? So we've got a lot of masters going out there, we're in quads, we're in fours, just learning. But the boat's all over the show. If if you just jump in straight away. Drills, things like that, stabilizing the boat, just ingraining good technique. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing, but I think with any technique, you kind of need to understand what you want to achieve by the drill, okay, and what the objective is. So something I haven't touched on here is that suspended drive. So you only have to suspend enough, okay, so that you can hold on to the water and feel the pressure on your seat. Feel the pressure come off your seat on the drive. And it's not a massive amount. So if you look at picture 4, where she's kind of in the meat and potatoes end of the drive, she's locked up to the water. For me, she's a little bit deep, I think. That's just a personal opinion. I think those blades are way too deep, but there is some debate about that in the rowing community. Some people think you need, deep is okay. I think that's unstable. In rough water, she'll have a big problem. Okay, but I like the fact that she's quite flat in the drive. She's hanging nicely off the blades. That's a good thing. So she's suspended off of her hands and her feet. She's driving all the way through to the back. I think by number 5, she's already down. She's on the deck and she's still drawing. Not a bad thing. I tend to not like to talk too much about vertical movement in the boat, but I mean, what we're talking about here in terms of the lifting, it's not lifting your shoulders or anything, it's lifting your backside, or it's just feeling the pressure on your seat get less. So if I had a piece of paper under there, when you drive, I should just be able to slip the piece of paper out from underneath you without you knowing it. So it's like, it's not that you're right off the seat, it's just that you're feeling that pressure, which just helps you to feel that you're engaged. And part of that is holding on with your core. And if you look at her in that picture number 4, look at how her pelvis is rotated. So she is rotated from the base of her pelvis. So she's not rounded her back and thrown her head forward. All of that rotation is coming purely from the pelvic tilt there. And if you look at it in the recovery phase, how she sets it up on 2, she's already over at check 2.
Graham, can I ask you a question about that, because I found it fascinating, especially with just being very light on the seat and in the drive. So, for example, and I want just give you an example from cycling. So, for example, when you're cycling up massive mountains, you know, if you're doing the Texas oil drill and your quads get overloaded. So what they tend to do is they'll say all that pressure is coming from your feet. So they'll say, just cycle as though you're cycling on feathers. And when you cycle on feathers, it allows you to do better circles and you don't overload parts of the body. Is it similar to what you're saying with regards to her sitting on the seat or you guys sitting on the seat? Is that you're just lightening up your load and lifting yourselves off so you're very light on the seat?
Yeah, and part of that will also come from, we had a call in that boat in 95, we would call Titan, where we just tighten the core and we tighten everything up, all the linkages in that. We just make sure that everything's under tension when we drive. And that we always felt quite light, and the drive always felt long. So, you know, if we rewind to, and this is where we're getting into the guys who learned how to row when I was around, or learned how to row before I was around, or the guys who were teaching us how to row. The technique was quite different. So I was fortunate enough to live through quite a revolution in equipment. We went from rowing with Macons to rowing with cleavers, and then from there we went from wooden boats to Kevlar composite boats, and now to carbon boats with carbon riggers. So everything's gotten a whole lot stiffer. So now we've gone back to slightly gooier oars, because, you know, if you have everything stiff, then your body's the thing that breaks, you know, because there's no give. And the technique, I mean, I think we went through a patch in South African rowing probably from 2000 through to about 2004, 2005, just pre-London, where the spate of quite bad back injuries was quite high. And that came out of rowing old, bad technique with modern equipment. Where the guys were absolutely thundering the catch, and just because you've got a boat that doesn't give, you've got blades that don't give, so something's got to give, you know, and that's the soggy interface in the middle, I'm afraid. That's what's going to break. So guys actually had quite bad, and some guys had career-ending injuries, like Stephen Hasselbach. I think he had stress fractures in his spine. Same with Andy Grant, AJ. He had stress fractures in his spine. And these were all brought about from a period in time where I think the training was quite bad. We saw that again under Roger a little bit. That was more to do with training volume and training load. And he had quite a problem with the guys, because when they were trying to get the volume up, to try and get them to back off on the intensity, you know. These guys are like racehorses, you know, when you put them in the stalls, they want to run. So you have to kind of hold them back. And he was having a tough time holding them back. So the guys were getting injured because they were like just pushing too hard. And with all the monitoring they were doing, they still battled to get these guys. So yes, Robbie, circling back to your comment a couple of weeks ago, where you said, you know, the rowing guys that come and do triathlons, they just row, they just go too hard. And I think that's something that we have to learn. But from a technique point of view, I think a softer approach, especially sculling, a much softer approach at the front, because our equipment's much more efficient than it used to be. So we can grip the water better. If it feels heavy, you're doing it wrong. It's just like that simple. If the boat feels light and moves easily, it only weighs 15 kilos. Don't attack it like it weighs 115 kilos.
Yeah. I mean, Graham, as a novice, I just want to throw in there, because you guys may be forgotten, but the first time I got in a boat, and you know, a lot of the novices probably, I assume, feel like this, is that you're not sure how much power you need to put into the boat. So you coming in going, I want to carry my load and share my load, and you've got no real feel for that. So you coming in and giving 100%, which in my case turned out to be like 120%. And so I would just keep dying, because because I had no reference point. So it's very difficult for me to figure it out. And I wanted to share, make sure that I carried my own weight in the boat. But eventually over time, and this is over a year, I started to realize I don't have to put that much power. I need to really soften a lot. I need to make sure I don't have to feel guilty that I'm not putting in maximum power. And that's, it's still a learning curve, but I think that's an important thing, for novices.
So I think a thing I've been playing over in my head more recently is to think about, and also we all fall into that trap of like, how was that stroke? You kind of row in single strokes. You start off going, oh, that was a good one. That one was cock. That was a good one. And, and you keep pushing to find this perfect one, and you stop. And that comes from actually rowing with these stroke coaches. I had one in my boat for ages. I haven't used it for about 2 months now. And my sculling improved so much since I've stopped looking in that and gone back to actually feeling what I'm doing. Because now what I'm looking at is I'm trying to feel how I'm picking the boat up, and I'm more concerned about momentum than I am about speed. So speed is something you can generate over a single stroke or 3 or 4 strokes. Momentum is something you can generate over distance. If you can continue momentum, you go fast for longer. And I think that's kind of key. And that comes back down to, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritties of technique, Drew Ginn, the Australian Olympian gold medalist in various disciplines, said it the best. He said, you rock up at the Olympics, and said everybody next to you is just as fit, just as strong. He said, what's the differentiator between you and them? And he says, it's the recovery. It's how you let the boat run underneath you. He said, that's the difference. They can all pull equally hard, but it's what they do when the blades aren't in the water that makes the difference. And it's carrying that momentum. And the momentum means that I don't have to row as hard as you on my next stroke, because I'm allowing the boat. I've generated momentum. If you look at that Kiwi pair that was so successful, that was them. Through the first 500, they usually lost, and then by the second 500, they're first, and by the third 500, they're 4 boat lengths ahead, and by the end of the race, they're 6 boat lengths ahead. Because why? Because they've just they find a groove and they generate momentum and they just keep going. So they come out, they flat split it, they found their speed. Everybody else is racing like a bull at a gate for the first 500, and then they just fall off the cliff as the race comes on. And these guys just keep going.
I'm going to jump in here. I'm just conscious of time. We try to keep this short and sweet. What we'll try to do now is I want you just to look at, so for the people obviously listening, most of the people are fitting into that category of going, I hear what you're saying, I want to row better. Just 1 or 2 points from each of these. So we actually go, I think these photos are in the wrong order. I always like, to start, say, from 6 from the finish. Important things, just 2 things for everyone listening. What should they be taking out of the finish? What is she doing right? What should they be looking to do? And how should that feel? Just in 10 seconds, because we'll try to go through each photo. And so people have got something to take away with them.
Okay, for me, I think she's probably sitting a little too far away from her blades at the finish. So if I were her coach, I would push her through the work a little more, which would help her with getting longer around the front without having to stretch over so much. So if we look at picture 3, where she's at the catch, I think her weight, well, she's doing quite well to keep her weight off the shoes, but there's still an appreciable amount of weight on her feet, and I don't like that. So for me, at the finish, she could be a little shorter there, a little more upright.
But so maybe I'll ask a question. Maybe the question for people: your preference. Obviously, we don't want people. I had a fun photo somewhere here. We obviously don't want people lying that far back.
No.
What is your guide? 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock?
1 o'clock is fine. You don't have to go mad, but it's still keeping that pelvis under control. So there, the thing, she's collapsed. She's rotated her hips and collapsed into the boat on the low back, and you can see by how the boat is deeper in the water there. So she's dropped all her weight at the back into the boat, and you can actually see the boat is lower.
Just talk about, I mean, what I do like here is at least the hand height is coming through. We're not, I mean, what I'm seeing, and we'll talk about it when we do rigging, but we either got people pulling, you know, up to their chests because boats are set too high, or pulling down into their crotch. Again, this 1 o'clock, hands sort of nice and parallel. You happy with that? And is that what people should be looking for?
Yeah, but look at where she is with her hands and where the spoons are. Well, she's out of the water already. So anything she does from here is like, you know, I don't know what the end goal is there. She's sitting so far back. Her hands have come down. The blades are out. And she's not even into the recovery yet. She's still kind of on the draw. Yeah, I would say. She's on the back end of the draw through the end. So that's just a whole lot of wastage.
Yeah. Let's go to, sorry, I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to push you a little bit.
Okay.
Photo 1. I mean, we've got a nice, she's at least come back, so she's moved her hips, not her shoulders necessarily. You happy with that?
Which one's that?
Number 1.
Number 1. Yeah, she has come up and over straight, so she's getting her pelvis rotated nicely. I like that.
And I think this
you
is
don't
important.
have to be. Yeah, you don't have to be that straight, but she is very straight. Some people can do that. Not everybody can. So you can be sitting a little more comfortable, but the key is to get your pelvis rotated. So by rotating your pelvis, the head should follow, rather than moving your head over. So when we get to the figure 2, I think she's too far over. She's now placed her weight. Her head is too far past her hips, so which means her weight's going to be on her feet, and that boat's going to slow down on the recovery. Oh. Okay, so that's definitely going to slow down. So when you go from there to figure 3, she's quite firmly on her feet, and the blades aren't in the water yet.
Do you like, I mean, just for something, I'm going to move away from criticizing her rowing to sort of what maybe people want to hear. The feeling here is that you've actually rocked over and you're sitting on the front of your bum, at least as a minimum. Well,
yes, but you must still be on your bum. So what you want to be is on your bum, but you actually don't want to. You want to have like you want a feather foot on the pedal, so to speak, in cycling terms. You don't actually want to be on the footboard yet. You want to be really, really light on your feet, like still almost pulling on the top of your shoes, as it were, to get the boat up underneath you, rather than you moving towards the boat. So if you're leaning on the boat, you have to slide towards your feet because they're not going to come to you. But if you're sitting on the front of your seat and you're drawing, you know, shoveling, pulling down on your heels, and you're drawing the boat underneath you, then you're actually accelerating it on the recovery. You're still accelerating the boat as opposed to slowing it down.
So we want a pivot move, but we don't want to have come so far over that we're feeling like we're coming up on top of the footboard and pushing down.
Yes.
And the idea, and I do like that, and I think that's important because, I mean, one of the interesting things I think that comes out with anyone rowing, but obviously more so with novices, is people forget to sit in the boat. You know, sit in the boat. I mean, you were coaching or crapping me out the other day of not going from sitting in the boat and just coming. You know, versus trying to balance and be everywhere. Yes. So this concept that in photograph 2, that we've moved over the pelvis is, you know, we've gone across, but that we're sitting there comfortably so that we can come forward without having to balance as we go.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's very flat, and she looks very comfortable. She looks planted on her seat. I don't know who this lady is, but. If you can get pictures of a girl called Imogen Grant, was another.
I was wondering if this was. I don't think this is Imogen. No. Because I thought for a second, isn't this Imogen Grant?
But no, she rows very, very differently. I think this girl might be a heavyweight.
Yeah.
But
then coming to the catch, I mean, and this is why I put this photo in, and I think this is an important photo for all sort of rowers. As people get tired, as the boat's not moving, as you said, I'm guessing this gent probably weighs 80, 90 kilograms. And as we get tired, we collapse. We throw 90 kilograms in the wrong direction, and then we try go back.
Yeah, so look, that's the classic concept 2 mistake. If you do that in a boat, it's absolutely going nowhere. And look, there are lots of haters for the concept 2. You can mark me down as one of them, because I think it teaches you more bad habits than it does good ones. You have to unteach things that you've learned if you spent a winter on the erg, versus if you just sculled a boat. We happen to live in a country where we can row for 300 days a year. I don't think anybody else in the world is that fortunate. I mean, this morning was the height of winter, and we're still out there. You know what I'm saying? We're a couple of days from the middle of winter, and everybody's still rowing. So we don't have snow. We don't. Yeah. So we shouldn't actually be sitting on machines for training unless you obviously cannot get to the water for whatever reason. And of course, if you need to pick up a session from a physicality point of view, I mean, then do it. But for me, on the recovery, and we spoke about it, that sensation of when you've come from the ergo, you look for length in the sculling boat out in front of you with your hands out there, as opposed to sitting up and pushing your hands around the corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your tips for people seeing the 2 photos, 3 and 4, coming to the catch. What are you thinking? What should you be avoiding? How should your body be feeling? So I liked your point of going, don't suddenly land on your feet. Robbie was talking about a nice concept the other day of either the pedal, a bicycle pedal, or a trampoline. That you just feel it in, feel it out. You know, you can't land there because you're going to kill it. Yeah. And then this concept also of hands must always go up, as you said, around the turn. So the idea that...
Well, in a sculling boat, your hands need to go out. So, I mean, at that point, she's quite long, but she's kind of reaching forward as opposed to going around the turn. So if she sat up a little more and got her, had her head a little further back in that image, then I would hasten to say, if she was sitting up a little more and pushing her hands around the corner, she'd probably get her seat underneath her a little bit more. Not that she needs to. Her shins are vertical. It's far enough. But again, this position here comes from the fact that she's sitting too far back in the boat. Yeah. If her feet were further forward, she would find that much easier get. And she's just wasting a shared load of space at the back here.
So just to share with some other people, I mean, the principle is, again, so don't necessarily look for the length in bending at the shoulders and reaching out. Yeah. But keeping that back a little bit straighter, but then using your arms to go out. And it's a pity Ramon's not on this call. You know, they've been talking about in the sweepball boat, following that arc. So instead of trying to reach over, just follow the arc round.
Yes.
So if she followed her pins round with her hands, but kept a bit higher, maybe less pressure going forward.
But I think the problem that she's got here is that her feet are too close to her, so she can't get around the turn. So in order to get around the turn, her feet need to move down the boat a bit so that she can push up a little further, and then she'll naturally find her way around the turn. She's just at the wrong part of the fulcrum at the catch. We always tend to set up for the finish, but the finish actually just informs where the catch is going to be. Now, not all of us have a gorilla length arm, so people with shorter arms, in order to get them around the corner, you probably need to row them with a shorter handle. But if you shorten the handle, you've got to shorten the whole blade, because it's about leverage and that. Yeah. So it's working with the individual at that stage to find out, what works for them. And then we're not all the same size.
And then drive, photo 4, we're in the thick of it. We're in the drive. Importance, obviously, and I think you mentioned it earlier, too many people trying to pull up and then down versus as much as possible horizontal draw plane.
Well, if you look at where her hands are at the catch in figure 3 and then where they are in figure 4, for me, I think she's really laid on quite hard there, and it's because she was on the feet. So the boat slowed down a lot, so she's under pressure to get it moving again. So she's attacked it with quite a lot of venom, and therefore she's buried the blades quite deeply. And even when you go through to figure 5, there's
deep.
no blade sticking out there, but that's buried, it's gone. So she's quite, I mean, if you look at the shaft, it's quite a long way up the shaft. I think that's too much for me.
But
I've been rowing with those Randall foils, and they're meant to prevent you from doing that.
Yeah. But the principles, I think, for people watching is if you can get it right, horizontal plane. So if anyone's taking video of you, try avoid this up, down, or pulling too low.
Yeah, we don't. The hands don't have an up, and they don't move in an arc. They should move in a straight line, level plane. So whatever that is, where you find the water and you're in, wherever your hands start, they should finish in the same height. Yeah. And also, don't forget that we rig left over right in a single. So when you draw through at the finish, your catch is left over right, and your midpoint is left over right, and your finish is left over right. Yeah. Okay, don't suddenly flatten your hands out at the finish or flatten them out at the catch, because your boat won't be level, because then it's going to be doing it's going to be doing this during the stroke, going like that. Then you're never going to balance it because you've upset it already.
And we're not going to get into sort of rigging, but I know sort of one of the ladies is on the call now. I mean, we're talking about rigging in 2 or 3 weeks' time, but the importance of, as you said, setting up your boats so that in the drive, your hands are just below your shoulders. You're not having to lift your shoulders, and making sure you've got that height set up. We're seeing lots of crews. It's club boats. People are getting in, it's set too low. I mean, sorry to share this one, but I think we've got a lot of masters who might have weighed 70 kilograms a while ago, now weighing 90, 4 of them getting a lightweight 4 or quad, and wonder why they're having to pull down to their crotch, and the boat is just not made for that weight. But setting up the boat so at least that your draw plane is, hands just below the shoulders don't have to come. And then when you're drawing through at the finish, and again, it'll be slightly different. As you said, I agree with you now. If that blade was covered, she's either going to come forward, otherwise she's really probably, that hand's going to go from horizontal to up, which is good.
But so look again. So if you look at 4, so look where she's at 3, hands down.
Yeah.
At 4, they're up. Now look at where they are at 5. They're even higher than they were at 4.
Yeah.
And then look where she finishes.
Yeah.
So she's pulled her hands from there because her legs are still flat in 5. Yeah. I mean, she's just flattened her legs in figure 6 and drawn her hands down. Her swing is done. So there's nothing left there. So she's pulled them straight down to get the blades out. Yeah. So actually, and looking at those blades, this is probably quite an old this is an old reference. So, I don't think anybody rowing like this now will be in or even make it into the British squad, because they row pretty darn well. So I think this is quite an old setup.
Yeah, Graham, can I ask you a question with regards to so I mean, that's analyzing everything. If you could give like 1 or 2 drills that I mean, the suspended drive's a great one that I'm adding it to my repertoire of tricks. But in terms of drills that like 1 or 2 drills just to help you improve your technical work around this. Some people are doing what do they call it? I'm going to get the names wrong, but where you take 3 strokes and then you do a scissor movement, you let the boat glide, and then you go in again. And
scissor movement.
Take a stroke and you do a missed stroke, almost a checkpoint 3. Is that what you mean, Robbie?
Yeah, and you do a missed stroke. That's one of the ones that we've been trying. And then one of the other ones are just pausing at different parts of the stroke. So you just pause at checkpoint 3. All those kind of drills. Is there anything that you think that we should be looking at?
All right, you've just touched on my pet hate, which is something that I was taught. We were taught checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3, checkpoint 4. Yeah. So checkpoint 1 was around the finish. Checkpoint 2 was still sitting fairly upright, hands over the knees. You probably referenced the girl we looked at just now. And then checkpoint 3 was body over, legs still reasonably flat, blades halfway down the shins, and sort of reached quite a long way over, like she's in figure 2, except her legs have popped already.
Yeah.
that's probably closer to checkpoint 4. I would say checkpoint 4 might even be on figure 3, somewhere between 2 and 3.
3, yeah.
Is checkpoint 4. Now, I think all of that is absolute baloney. I think it must all go out the window. We shouldn't be rowing like that anymore, because when you speed that movement up, it's a disaster. You can only land on your feet because you've already set your weight up. You've positioned yourself, taken your weight off of your bum and placed it on your feet. On the recovery, and what you're doing is leaning against that poor 15-kilogram skiff that's trying to make it in the opposite direction, and you're shoving it the other way. Okay.
So what would you? So to Rick, Rob's point, what do you think's the best drills? If there were 2 drills you would having all masters do tomorrow?
I would have them start off. If you're going to stop anywhere, or if you're going to slow down anywhere, slow down at the finish. Okay. But once you elect to leave the backstop, you pull the boat underneath you in one easy movement and find the water as quickly as you can. You don't have to get onto the drive, but you just got to get it in. Okay. And once you're in, then you can drive. So everybody thinks that you have to drive it into the water, which is what she's done here in figure 4. She's loaded up from 3 to 4, and she's like really nailed the bejesus out of the front. Okay. So, and it's simple. If you look at a sculling boat from the top, if you look at where the spoons are, they're quite close to parallel to the boat, and you're at full stretch in figure 3, where she's there. So most of her energy is going to go, 70% of her energy is going to go sideways. It's pushing outwards. So why would you want to load up so heavily there? Because all of that energy is just getting wasted. So you're just making a cock investment. You know what I'm saying?
So a drill like if you had a quad or you have a 4 and you stabilize the boat, and in sort of pairs, you sort of go sit at checkpoint 1 and you just say, from here, 2 of you just go to the catch and find it, and be comfortable to be able to come forward and stop there with the blades in the water and see if you're falling over, to make sure that you can feel, I can go from checkpoint 1 and we're not going to try balance it. We're just going to come and place without falling over. You know, do that three times, and on the 3rd one, you're there, you loaded, take a stroke. Is that like a drill that can help that?
Yeah, that also watching people doing it properly is also a good drill. So go and watch the Kiwi 8, the training videos from Tony O'Connor. He's got tons of training videos on the Kiwi 8 pre-Tokyo. And just have a look at this particular video here. I mean, watch these guys. And when they're training, they sit on the back. So now this is a start that you're showing me here, where they don't look like they are, there's no anger, there's no gnashing of teeth. It's just calmly shifting the boat off the line and building momentum. And as the momentum comes up, they get faster and faster to keep up with the boat. So they're building boat speed, as opposed to there's no gnashing of teeth or ripping holes in the water. It's just about building momentum. And I mean, just to kind of crystallize this thing, Robbie, for you, is it is all about the boat. I know it sounds cliched, but none of this works if you don't consider what's happening with the boat. Okay, and everything you do or try should be prefaced with, will it make the boat go faster? Okay, and if it doesn't, if the answer is no, then you don't do it. It's just that simple. And it comes from, how do we recover? So if you watch these guys and you watch some of their training drills, is they sit there rowing low rates, where they sit at the back, and then they draw the boat up quite quickly underneath them, and they just drop it in the water, and then they drive, and the drive takes what it takes. You know, if the boat's moving slowly, the drive takes longer. If the boat's moving quicker, the drive will be quicker. So it's just, they don't hurry the drive. They wait for the boat to give to give them speed. Okay, so they apply the pressure. I've had a number of analogies of this, and one of them is standing on a gravel road and trying to push a car. Okay, you push too hard, your feet will slip. If you push just enough, the car will move, and as the car goes faster, you can move faster with the car. Because remember, we're putting a blade into water. You know, it's water, and if you push too hard, you push through the water, then the boat doesn't go anywhere. So now you've generated a whole lot of energy that's going nowhere. So you can only push so hard. in order to get a return. You can't push more than that. And that's why you'll pull up next to a master's lady that's rowing maybe at 23, 24 strokes to the minute, and she weighs 55 kilos, and she's cleaning your pipes. Okay. Because you're sitting there trying to thunder big holes in the water, and she's just skipping over the top because she's not trying to rip a big hole in the water.
Guys, I'm gonna cut in because we've got to manage time here, so I'm gonna jump in. So
you can edit it later, man.
Yeah. I knew I was going to have to stop you, guys. We could talk for forever. The two things, sorry, because we're going to, just to prepare everybody who's on, I'm just going to summarize two things you said there. We've got to quickly do the adverts, and then please, if people have got questions, be ready to sort of ask them, because straight after the adverts, we'll do that. To summarize, so again, so the intention is being able to go from checkpoint 1 and with a stable boat, place, be comfortable to place, not fall over, and find how your body needs to be positioned there. And then maybe the second drill from that, with rowing again in pairs, with the load. So what we mean by load is the boat is dead. It's heavier, so you're going to feel it better. Then it's that idea. So what I think Robbie's trying to talk about is the next drill then is what we used to call 0% rowing. So I've gone there, I've placed, and instead of trying to yank, it really is this idea of slowly accelerating from a 5% up to a 50%, just together with your partner, legs, body open, and feel the boat. So it's not about attacking, it's really, and those two drills, trying to just get that feel for the boat. And as you bring in the third person, the boat speed picks up, and you just try to get that feeling back again and try and engrave that. Would you agree with those?
Yes, I would. And so if you're in a scull like Robbie is often, then what I would suggest is wrapping a bungee around the boat to add extra drag on it if you want to feel the same load coefficient to feel the drag.
Yeah,
and
that's a very good point.
I'm being dead serious. So then so basically you're increasing the resistance, which helps you to feel that drive because it slows the boat down and helps you to feel that connection. A lot more easily. Hey, I didn't know we were selling things on the show.
We are, we're just trying to get some messages out there. So while we do the adverts quickly, if you've got questions, type them up or put your hand up. And on Teams, there's a little raise your hand icon at the top there. So if you've got a question ready, just quickly come. So we had the Vikings and Wemapan regatta that went well. That's now done. Not this weekend, the weekend after, down at Elgin. The Elgin Regatta is still happening. So those people who want to go down there, there are some people going down from Gauteng. So if you need to get a boat put on somewhere, just shout. And then obviously contact details there. If you need, it is on YouTube where this video gets loaded up. Then other little things, a lot of the schools trying to sort of raise some funds. It looks like it's next week, Friday, Holy Rosary at Bailey's. Are going to be doing a fundraiser, 150 Rand a head. You can go straight onto the Bailey's Live site, baileyslive.co.za, and go to shop, and you'll see the Holy Rosary event there. You can book. Again, what we try to do is support all the schools. We're one community. If you want a night out, it's good fun, and there'll be people you know. Other regattas, long row is the 25th of June, so that's 2 weeks or 3 weeks time. Again, interesting row. It's a long row. I think it's 27 kilometers, but it's an interesting row, and you can have a nice breakfast afterwards. And then after that, another interesting row, if you've never done this one, is the Head of the Bay in Durban. It's an interesting experience. Better to go in big boats on that one. And then lastly, St. Mary's, they're doing a fundraiser, which it's a private screening of a new movie coming out, and that is still in July. So we'll sort of mention it again in one of the next calls. But again, if you want to get hold of someone there, it's tanya@merittravel.co.za, and you can find out, and we can support those things if you've got kids and they want to go to there. Cool, that's it. So questions from anybody? I see Demetra was typing away vigorously. And feel free also, because it's a smaller group, we can people can put their cameras on and ask directly if
it's probably quicker.
Yeah. So there's a question coming from Jimmy, Demetra, and she said, what racing starts and/or technique should one consider? And does the type of boat make a difference in the various starts?
Yes, absolutely. If you're trying to get an 8 off the line, The crew and the boat roughly weigh about a ton, so it's like trying to shift a truck off the line. So if you start thumping away at it, it's not going to move very quickly. And if you watch this Kiwi start, that is the perfect way to get a boat off the line. I think they rode about a 121 for a first split over 500 meters. If you can do that, you'd win the race.
And Graham, with questions like that, I row with Demetra, who's a legend, by the way. So when it comes to our starts, we've trying to come up with a variety of starts. So we're going, 3 3/4,
classic,
push for 10. Is that a classic? Can we use that?
Yeah.
Does it make a difference?
Yeah. Well, we talk about in a double, right?
In a double, correct.
Yeah. I would say that's a good way to go. A lot of guys get like really clever with a 3/4, then a half, and 3/4, and then that's too complicated. I mean, if you look at this 8, I mean, what they did going off the line there was really simple. Start off with one short one, and then a slightly longer one, and then a slightly longer one. So I would go. Everybody makes the mistake is that they want to be rating 40 by the third stroke. Okay, now watch these guys. They're patient. They
Very
wait. The rate comes later, much later.
Yeah, I just counted. They almost did a draw, and they do what would appear to be almost like 5 3/4, which is just purely building. Nothing. I think the biggest mistake people make with a start is they try belt any of the first 3 strokes until that boat is moving. Don't rev.
No, you're trying to get the boat off the line, not see how hard you can pull. Okay, so you're trying to build momentum. So if sometimes the fastest starts feel the laziest, you feel like, gee, I haven't done anything, but the boat's actually flying. By the time you get through the routine, you get to the back end of the start, into the meat and potatoes of it, the boat is absolutely flying. So I would say yes, your 3 3/4. Then I would say 5 lengthen. Rather than 5 build, because you're not ready to build yet, because the boat's still after 3 3/4 not moving fast enough yet. So all you want to do is keep going with the 3/4. So maybe your next one is like a 7/8, so you're not quite at full length. So you spend the next 5 strokes just trying to find length and build momentum on the boat, and then you can kind of tease a bit of a build out of it on the next 5 if you want, just to feel and go as you feel. Like if it's feeling better, maybe it's 7 length and then 5 build. So you've got to wait. You've got to be patient and wait until the boat feels right before you can get it. Matthew Sol summed it up wonderfully the other day. He had this thing where he said you've got to have a platform, and he's absolutely right. You've got to set a platform before you can move on and get into the race. And so you don't want to set an unstable platform and be ratty-assed out of the start, because it's going to take you 30 strokes to fix that problem down the track. But if you get away nice and clean and you've got a platform to work from, you can always make up. If you lose a half a length or a quarter of a length at the start, it's not the end of the world. You'll make that back if you can get into your racing a lot earlier, in terms of being on a stable platform and starting to generate momentum and speed. These guys don't worry about whether they're first off the start. In actual fact, in Tokyo, they weren't first off the start. They were probably 3/4 of a boat length to down midway through the race. And I think just prior to the 1,000, they put in a massive shift. So everybody pushes in the third 500. These guys pushed halfway through the second 500, through to the third 500, and through the third 500, and they came out a canvas ahead.
To answer Damien's question there quickly, hopefully, Damien, please feel free to sort of talk on it. Yeah, so I think what Graham's trying to explain there is, don't be fooled. The sun, quick, choppy, short strokes versus feel the boat. The shorter strokes just mean you're tapping, you're getting the momentum. But I do really like what you said there, Graham. It's not only about getting the boat up to speed, but create that platform and stable. If you've got there in a good way, your arms will be loose, you'll be on your legs, and then you can push into that first 500 versus, as you said, I think we've all experienced it. You can get some bloody quick starts, but you're all over the show. And then you're trying to go, okay, I need to bring the rate down 3 or 4 pips and I need to relax my arms here. Otherwise, I'm going to die, you know. So important to build. And I think the recommendation you can make is if everybody went out, you know, it's quite funny how people are excited about starts, but if you went out and tried the starts tomorrow and you said drop them to 70%, genuinely 70% starts, and actually timed yourself over that first 100 meters, good chances you'd go quicker. So
the first VLC4 that I rode in that was really, really successful, which was probably a good 5 or 7 years before the one that you know, was with Roy Pepper, John Gehring, who was also in that 8, and Doug Gow. And that was also an exceptional crew. And our thing was, and that's what I learned from them, was think 70% at the start. The adrenaline will fill in the other 30, promise you. Just think 70%. Don't try and shoot the lights out. Just think 70% and think about draw and get the boat up and get it off the line and think about being neat and tidy, finding the platform. The adrenaline will fill in the rest. You will pull hard enough. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay. When the oak drops the flag, you will row hard enough.
Yeah. And it's almost being patient with those first strokes. Totally. You know, don't rip them up.
Yeah.
If there aren't any more questions, are there any more questions? Because if not, I'm actually going to call it an evening, because our intention always is to try to keep this under an hour, just so that there's more to talk about in the future. But also, that's pretty much about as much time as people have got in an evening. Any other questions?
I've got a question. Okay, now this is controversial, Graham, but I need to ask it. Okay. If I gave you 3 months, I would pay. You don't have to work at all, and you can just train for 3 months. How fast could you do 1,000 meters in a scull in a race?
I would probably need more than I probably need more than 3 months. But
no, you're only doing 3 months. Only 3 months, Graham. You can't have more.
Okay. Well, I know what I can do over a very short distance. I have moved the sculling boat up to 19.2 k's an hour out of the blocks.
Yes.
That's quite fast. I don't think I did that. And I was rating 44. What was the other stat there? Split was a 131. Okay.
131.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do that in the car.
Exactly. So okay. I would have to. Look. That's. I mean, you'd never maintain that. I mean, that if I could do that, I'd be the world champion today. Yeah. So I reckon conservatively, if I trained and did a lot of work, put a lot of work into a 1,000-meter race, I could probably string together two 138s. That'll put me around a 316, 320, somewhere around there in a single, which is shifting. But yeah, I'd need to be really fit to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, 3 months. Really that's power. Okay, so we're saying 350, eh?
Sorry, Rob, I'm going to cut you. There's going to have to be a 3-second statement, because I'm going to cut the call now. You got another question?
Yeah. That's it. Thanks, Graham. It is awesome.
Okay, so when are we starting, Rob?
I've started, as we started the call, I've already started thinking about going for it. You and I will train together, my boy. I don't have to do 3:15. I'm fine with a 3:30.
Oh, okay. All right. Who's paying for me to do this?
You and me, my friend.
Just to close off, and it was interesting that earlier on we had the photo of your crew up, and one of the things that this was a crew that sort of inspired the next sort of generation, and it's a pity you can't see, but you had that very nice sponsorship from Bosch.
Yes, well, it's all on the yellow things on the
there's singlets, the Bosch,
yeah.
And if you watch, I think it's called Gold Fever, which was the GB4 series. That's also on YouTube if anybody wants to watch an interesting views. Of course, when they come to SA, they lend the boats, and Bosch is also in all the videos. And I know as Rosa now looks to figure out how it finances its elite squads, ongoing. is here's a funny story. I was so impressed by your boss. I don't know if you can remember. You guys all got those long sleeve Bosch tops, and I think you got 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed with those that I think Ramon, I, and Paul in our construction company and any building we've ever done, we've put Bosch equipment in. To this day, my house has Bosch because they sponsored you. So for future sponsors, and what is this, 20 years, 30 years ago?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. I'm sure Bosch would be very happy that you put all of the stuff in your house. But the guys who sponsored us were Bosch Automotive. So if you've been buying Mercedes or BMW, you're probably still, and I see you've got a few Mercs in the stable, so you're still supporting.
There we go. We're good. Perfect. Thanks, Graham. Thanks for your time.
Okay,
we'll see you on the weekend. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Okay. Ciao.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers, Rob.
Bye. Ciao. Thanks, guys.
Recording.